There's a kind of longing that no one talks about. It's not exactly desire. It's not exactly heartbreak. It's something deeper, something more ancient. It begins as an ache, not for another person, but for a part of you that you don't even realize is missing. You see, we often think we're looking for love, but what we're really searching for is a sense of home, a return, a reconnection, not just to another, but to ourselves. Carl Jung once wrote that the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But the transformation we crave isn't always about us and them. Sometimes it's about remembering who we were before we tried to find ourselves in someone else. Many of us confuse love with projection. We project the sacred feminine we lost onto her. We project the divine masculine we never integrated onto him. And then we call it destiny. But it's not destiny, it's a mirror. Relationships become the screen upon which our unconscious writes its forgotten scripts. The touch we crave is the one we were denied as a child. The validation we seek is the echo of a parent who never saw us. The passion that intoxicates us is the fire we were forced to put out to survive. And so, we chase partners like missing pieces. We fall in love with reflections. We cry over projections. And we call it romance. But often, it's remembrance. You're not broken for wanting love. But ask yourself this: is it really love you're craving? Or is it a reconnection with a version of you that you abandoned long ago? We romanticize what is actually a trauma echo. We get addicted to people who awaken the wound because some part of us believes healing can happen in the repetition. And that's where it gets dangerous, because every time we think they're the one, we lose another piece of ourselves trying to hold on. The truth is, the soul doesn't want another person to complete it. The soul wants to come back to its own wholeness, and until we do that, love will feel like loss, desire will feel like emptiness, and relationships will feel like returning to someone else's house, never our own. Carl Jung understood that what we seek in others is often what we have exiled within ourselves. He called it eros. Not just the erotic, but the magnetic pull of the soul toward unity. Eros isn't merely about pleasure or partnership. It's about the longing to restore what was divided. When we haven't met our own inner feminine, she appears outside us. When we've rejected our inner masculine, he arrives in someone else. And the attraction is overwhelming, because the soul recognizes itself. But this recognition is not always love. It's more like resonance, a sacred signal, an ancient frequency. Jung called this projection, the unconscious tendency to place internal contents like the anima or animus onto others. The anima, the inner feminine in a man, and the animus, the inner masculine in a woman, are archetypes that hunger for attention. If unacknowledged, they don't disappear. They externalize, and so we fall for people who embody what we've disowned. You don't just fall in love with them. You fall in love with the you see reflected in them. But here's the paradox. The very people who awaken our soul wounds also carry the potential to awaken our soul truth. They trigger what is still unhealed. They reveal where the fracture lives. They show us what's still missing inside. That's why the bond feels predestined, because in a way, it is. The psyche is always seeking reintegration. And love, or what we call love, becomes the ritual through which that reintegration is attempted. But without awareness, the ritual becomes a cycle. And the cycle becomes a prison. You meet someone, you feel electric, you open, you lose yourself, you suffer, you survive. And then, you repeat. Jung warned that unless we make the unconscious conscious, it will direct our life, and we will call it fate. And in relationships, this truth becomes painfully clear. We call it falling in love. But perhaps what we're really doing is falling back into the pattern. To break the pattern is to break the spell. And that spell is cast by the part of you that still believes you are not whole, unless someone else says you are. But you are. You always were. You were simply taught to forget. There comes a moment, often after heartbreak, silence, or solitude, when something inside you stops chasing and starts listening. Listening to what? To the quiet ache beneath the longing, to the deeper voice beneath the craving, to the question beneath every romantic pursuit: am I really searching for someone, or am I trying to return to something I lost within myself? This is the threshold of return, the moment when the persona of the lover fades and the self begins to whisper. Because what you truly seek is not another person. It's the feeling you believed only they could give you. Safety, belonging, recognition, home. But here's the sacred reversal. You are not meant to find home in another. You are meant to awaken the part of you that is home, so that when love arrives, it has somewhere to land. Jung called this process individuation, the soul's journey back to wholeness. And the first step in that journey is withdrawal, not isolation, but sacred retreat, pulling back the projections, gathering the fragments, asking, what of this was mine, and what was theirs? Because so many relationships are not truly shared, they are entangled. You pour your unmet needs into their silence. You insert your fantasies into their presence. You see not them, but your unloved parts in their eyes. And then, when they leave, it feels like death. Not because they were your oxygen, but because they were your mirror. And that mirror shattered. But here's the quiet truth few dare to face. That shattering is a gift, because it forces you to meet the you behind the mask of lover. The you that existed before you were hurt, before you chased, before you made someone else the reason for your aliveness. It brings you to the holy ground of inner reintegration. This is the moment when the anima and animus begin to return, not as projections, but as partners within. The feminine within you teaches you to feel without shame. The masculine within you teaches you to protect what is sacred, and together, they create the inner marriage Jung spoke of, the union of opposites, the healing of polarity, the return to center. Only from this place can love be true, not needy, not clingy, not a search for completion, but a celebration of two souls who have already come home to themselves. In sacred scripture, the love story we rarely talk about is not between man and woman, but between the soul and its creator. Throughout the Bible, divine love is not described as romantic, but as redemptive. A love that sees through your shame. A love that waits through your betrayal. A love that calls you home, even when you've forgotten the way. This is the spiritual echo behind every heartbreak, every longing, every silent night wondering, why do I feel so alone if I've given someone all of me? Because your soul wasn't made just for partnership. It was made for union with what is eternal, and until that union is honored, all other loves feel insufficient. Carl Jung knew this, not from theology, but from experience. He said that psychology must open itself to the spiritual dimension or remain incomplete, because the self is not just a psychological construct, it is a divine spark. It is the image of God planted within. And when we project that divine essence onto a person, we unknowingly ask them to be our savior, our source, our reason to feel worthy again. But they can't be that. They weren't made for that. Only God can fill the infinite. Only the divine can hold your eternal ache. The Song of Songs whispers of a love that transcends form, a longing between the soul and the divine lover. And maybe your heartbreak wasn't a punishment. Maybe it was a preparation, a tearing down of idols, a sacred heartbreak designed not to ruin you, but to reroot you, so that when you kneel in the quiet, without someone else's name on your lips, you finally whisper, God, return me to myself, so I can return to you. That prayer, that broken, honest, sacred plea, is where true love begins, not in finding the one, but in remembering the one who never left. The soul doesn't need another to complete it. It needs the divine to awaken it. And from that awakening, all other love flows. Something shifts the moment you stop chasing people and start listening to what your soul is actually asking for. Not a hand to hold, but a mirror. Not a text at night, but a truth that doesn't leave when you fall apart. Carl Jung wrote that the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But what he didn't say is that if you're not whole before that meeting, you will mistake transformation for dependence. Because when you are fragmented within, every relationship becomes a rescue mission. You don't love, you attach. You don't see, you project. You don't connect, you merge. And that fusion feels like home, until it hurts. Until they walk away and take your peace with them. But here is the truth that only suffering reveals. You are not missing someone. You are missing you. And every time you looked for salvation in a kiss, every time you lost yourself just to be chosen, every time you begged to be seen, you were really begging for your own return. When you begin to gather the pieces, when you stop blaming them for not healing what they didn't break, when you sit in the silence and say, "I'll stay with me this time," something holy happens. You realign. You stop negotiating your essence for temporary affection. You stop shrinking your soul to fit into stories that were never yours. You remember who you were before they forgot how to love you. And that remembering, that sacred reunion with yourself, is the beginning of every true connection you'll ever have. Because the soul that has come home to itself does not seek to be completed. It seeks to be mirrored. And when that happens, love is not need. It is recognition. If you made it this far, you already know this isn't about love stories. It's about soul stories. It's not about who will text you back, but who you become when no one does. It's not about being chosen, but about choosing to return to yourself. The pain you felt in relationships wasn't always about the other person. It was the echo of your own absence, the ache of a self left behind in the pursuit of being enough for someone else. But now, you don't have to repeat the pattern. You don't have to beg to be seen. You don't have to suffer just to feel something real. The soul doesn't want drama. It wants depth. It doesn't want fantasy. It wants freedom. And the moment you stop searching outward, you'll hear the quietest whisper rising within. I'm still here. The most powerful love story is the one where you come back to you. If this message spoke to a place words can't touch, leave this in the comments below. It wasn't love. It was the longing for myself. Let others read your truth and realize they're not alone in this sacred remembering.